Top 10 Best Martin Scorsese Movies. 10. The Wolf of Wall Street. Scorsese's bilious picture of Jordan Belfort may soon join Goodfellas as one of the director's most highly rewatchable films, based on its widespread exposure on cable. And, as with Goodfellas, just because the film is timeless entertainment doesn't imply Scorsese admires the characters he's portraying. The Wolf of Wall Street is a 3-hour exploration of greed and arrogance that strips away the moral barriers that ordinarily protect spectators, allowing us to fully appreciate the revolting, heinous excesses on exhibit. DiCaprio is magnificent as Belfort, a nasty before he's rich and an even bigger jerk once he's rich. Meanwhile, Scorsese employs his familiar methods, a thumping soundtrack, swirling cameras, and various voiceovers, to uncover a Wall Street ecology immune to the laws and ethics that the rest of us must follow. The film's analysis of excess can be overbearing at times, but The Wolf of Wall Street is hypnotic, and a scathing criticism of us poor rubes. We're all those suckers at the end of the film, attempting to sell Belfort a pen. 9. The Irishman. Scorsese's glamorization of the mafia lifestyle was never totally convincing to us. Sure, he recognized that these individuals were captivating and fascinating, but they frequently met tragic ends, they rarely strolled off into the sunset. That underlying ambivalence regarding the criminal underworld has always made his films resound, providing a vicarious thrill but also buzzing with moral ambiguity. To be sure, The Irishman makes it clear, crime does not pay. Over the course of 3.5 hours, he and screenwriter Steven Zaillian transformed Charles Brandt's novel I Heard You Paint Houses into a near-definitive treatise on organized crime, painting a depressing portrait. Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, is a small-time driver who works his way up the ladder and finally becomes close friends with Jimmy Hoffa. Nearly everyone in The Irishman is a dead man waiting to die. We meet supporting characters through an interstitial that tells us when and how they buy the farm, and the film's poignancy is paired with a clear-eyed confidence that these people do not deserve our sympathy. Scorsese films are rarely elegiac, but Sheeran serves as not only an introduction to the mafia, but also a means of understanding that there are no heroes, or anti-heroes, in this nest of thieves. The closing scene allows room for numerous interpretations, but it's clear that this director and some of his treasured collaborators, like Harvey Keitel and Joe Pesci, have gathered their forces for a knockout farewell. 8. Shutter Island. Teddy is in a lot of pain. He's a U.S. Marshal, scarred by World War II, mourning the death of his wife, and plagued by headaches, attempting to figure out how a mentally ill patient might go missing in a tightly guarded facility on a secluded New England island. But nothing is going to be simple for Teddy and his new partner, Chuck, especially when Teddy's grip on reality begins to slip. This is the sad narrative of Shutter Island, a film that, we humbly believe, is even more emotionally distressing after you know the big twist. Repeat viewings heighten this story of bereavement and willful illusion, and DiCaprio is a knockout as a guy who investigates others to avoid steadying himself. Using avant-garde composers such as John Adams and Max Richter as inspiration, Scorsese creates a psychological horror film that is also a stinging tragedy, all while providing a depiction of post-war dread on par with the master. Shutter Island is a snapshot of PTSD and acute trauma disguised as a delicious B-movie that is both intentionally old-fashioned and bracingly current. Which is worse, Teddy asks his partner, living as a monster or dying as a nice man? Teddy, unfortunately, will find out. 7. The Departed. At the time, it seemed ridiculous, if not offensive, that of all the films Scorsese would eventually win an Oscar for, it would be this, a gruesome, sleeves-rolled-up slick crime thriller with all the adrenaline of a Scorsese gangster film but without any of the dread and remorse. However, the years have been kind to The Departed, a film that practically does at the greatest level what countless of thrillers have been attempting for decades. Scorsese gets it done without breaking a sweat. Sure, Jack Nicholson overacts a touch, and not everyone agrees on the controversial last shot. But The Departed is the film that every tough guy Tarantino want Toby would kill his mother to produce. Scorsese, who was about to turn 64, crafted the greatest possible version in his sleep. 6. Casino. Occasionally, a film is wrongly criticized because it reminds viewers of a previous, superior picture by the same filmmaker. Take, for example, Casino, which was panned since it debuted so soon after Goodfellas, another big gangster film starring Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. Because the film is so good, it has withstood such criticisms. Scorsese examines the underbelly of Las Vegas through the eyes of a buttoned-down mobster, whose studious approach can't put calamity at bay. There are obvious parallels with Goodfellas. Pesci, as De Niro's pal, appears to be attempting to outdo his Oscar-winning performance from the previous picture. But Casino's epic sweep is much more audacious. And Goodfellas lacked a character like Ginger McKenna, a hustler who is as devious as the men around her. Sharon Stone has never been better than in this role, when she is accompanied by James Woods as one truly sleazy lowlife. Goodfellas is better, but this operatic drama isn't far behind. 5. Mean Streets. When Mean Streets was released, Roger Ebert predicted that Scorsese would become the American Fellini in a decade. When Scorsese encountered Ebert soon after, he famously asked the critic, "Do you really believe it's going to take 10 years? That was not Scorsese's path. He's too much of an original to be anyone's American. But watching this 1973 film, you can see what Ebert meant. Mean Streets is Scorsese's adaptation of Fellini's semi-autobiographical play I Vitelloni, about a group of young guys trying to figure out their life. Tormented Charlie and Wild Cannon Johnny Boy are two small-time gangsters who live on the outside of the New York mob scene. Keitel and De Niro are impossibly young, but they're both fully developed, exuding the angst and volcanic wrath that have become their trademark. Mean Streets. Scorsese is dipping his toe into the issues that would come to characterize his career: violence, Catholicism, guilt, with a ferocious energy that would be polished and probed more profoundly in later productions. Mean Streets was a revelation at the time. In retrospect, it feels like the rich first chapter of his career's big novel. 4. The King of Comedy. This prickly, brazenly unlikable little black comedy was the go-to Scorsese film to pick as his most undervalued for years. Unfortunately for our society, The King of Comedy remains depressingly relevant, a journey inside the head of an unstable aspiring stand-up who feels famed talk show host Jerry Langford would love him if he simply got to know him. Scorsese's picture, inspired by a moment in which a Beatle was murdered in New York City, continues to speak to our times, which are saturated in celebrities and people wanting to become, consume, and even destroy them. Scorsese swings from truth to illusion with astonishing ease, while De Niro plays Rupert Pupkin like a walking shame. 3. Raging Bull. It's easy to regard this film as the pinnacle of tortured male cinema. The lead actor put on a lot of weight for the role, the director was going through a spiritual crisis, and the subject was, yep, a raging bull whose athletic talent couldn't cover up his many personal defects. Filmmakers have been seeking the visceral savagery Scorsese conveyed to Raging Bull's boxing scenes for decades. They remain poetic and horrifying pieces of art. De Niro, on the other hand, transformed himself into a caged beast, a chest-thumping monster who only finds peace when he's pounding someone's brains in or having someone else do it to him. Any dark character study that followed Raging Bull, any slightly depressing sports biopic, must battle with this film's lengthy shadow. It's a difficult film to adore, but it's impossible not to be moved by its intensity and its unwavering confidence that anyone, including Jake LaMotta, is deserving of redemption. 2. Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver, like its protagonist, has always felt overly realistic. Its nightmarish vision of New York as a hell that just needs a rain to wash all the scum off the sidewalks is so fully realized that the city has been portrayed alternately as the most horrible and the most wonderful place on earth ever since, as if to either avoid or compensate for Scorsese's depiction. De Niro, who spent time driving a taxi alone at night to prepare for the role, plays Travis Bickle, who is troubled and anguished in ways that are so obvious on the surface that it's almost too hard to look at. He's dangerous in ways that not even he understands. And, with its climax, which undercuts and recontextualizes everything that has come before it, the film creates an entirely new hellscape that becomes more familiar with each passing day. Taxi Driver has almost as much filmmaking power as a single individual should have. 1. Goodfellas. Goodfellas, like many indisputable masterpieces, has been so ingrained in our common memory that it now risks being reduced to a collection of famous phrases, stylistic flourishes, and striking visuals. The Layla death montage, I'm hilarious how. The Copacabana tracking shot, Henry Hill's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days jump into the fire sequence. Watch Goodfellas again, And you'll be shocked at how fascinating and intricate the whole thing is, how its depiction of an aspiring mobster is a twisted and corrupted template for the American dream. Goodfellas, which drained The Godfather's pulp delights and provided the DNA for The Sopranos, never forgets that crooks love the lives they lead, and thus the film is also fiendishly entertaining and funny, until it isn't. Scorsese has never hidden the fact that he grew up with people like Hill and that he has always respected them, even though he knows he shouldn't. In Goodfellas, he effectively works through those contradictory emotions. Even after all these years, we are still divided about these extremely charismatic reprobates. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.